Next up is one of my favorite series of all time. This is my hands down the series and the games that got me into gaming in the first place. My absolute favorite of all time is The Legend of Zelda. And while you can start with the very first game, The Legend of Zelda, on the NES, but where I think is a very decent place to start is on the Super Nintendo with A Link to the Past. Now, this was the game where they really kind of figured it out, where they figured all the mechanics and the full kind of feeling of the story. And so this was kind of the pinnacle, and would be the pinnacle, of the 2D Zelda-style game. And what I think is really surprising about Link to the Past is that it starts off so strong with great pacing, where the prince has been captured, your uncle tells you to sneak into the castle. It's a great opening, and this is the definitive 2D Zelda experience. And this is a fantastic game. It's really, really good, and I highly encourage it. That being said, though, as good as this game is, I don't know if it's the right place to actually start. Because as good as this game is, the next game of the series is the game that defined what Zelda is, the pinnacle of the series and the experience as a whole. And it is the only Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the N64. This game is the best game I have ever played. And there are a few things about it that make it like that. It's the pacing, the quality, the music, the soundscape, the characters, the writing, the items, the puzzles, the dungeons, everything. This was a game that not only did it come out, was it considered a great game overall in terms of its design, but technologically Nintendo was trying to figure out the 3D space, so Z targeting revolutionized everything, and it eventually led to Grand Theft Auto 3 kind of borrowing or adapting the same system, and Grand Theft Auto becoming its own franchise because of this game. And this is all documented in Rockstar interviews, that they said they were watching what Nintendo was doing in order to make their game. So to me, Zelda is synonymous with this game. To me, this was the game that turned video games from a cool pastime into a serious hobby. This was the game that opened up my eyes to what an actual holistic experience is. And you know, this was a time when guides online weren't really available, so you really had to figure out things yourself. And I'd encourage you now, maybe, to use a guide if you're really, whatever. But if you can beat this game without guides, it's a completely nuanced, amazing experience. And it's just magical. There's no other words to put past it. And it literally is the 10 out of 10 top-rated game of all time across multiple sites. It's interesting that there are a few different people that will have different 10 out of 10s depending on what system they owned. But for me, across any system, any genre, this is the game. So by all means, you can start with A Link to the Past if you wish, but if you truly want to fall in love, and this is, again, even one of the first games I ever truly owned and beat, it's the game. So as much as you might want to start with Link to the Past, by no means do not be afraid to start with this. And in terms of story and lore, you don't need to know a whole lot. This will start you off perfectly. It is a perfect starter game, and it will catapult you into the world of gaming and the potential of what games are. And almost 30 years on from when this game released, I still hold it to the same amazing quality that is just unsurpassed. So by all means, please start here and change your life. Next is Majora's Mask with the holographic cartridge. I love this thing. It's so cool. This is a game that you're going to follow up with. Almost everyone who played Ocarina and fell in love with it also fell in love with Majora. Well, to a different extent. Majora is It's a good sequel, believe me. It still holds the same mechanical values as Ocarina, but the one thing I would say about it is that it's just weird. It's really, really weird. And they reuse a lot of the same assets, which is fine. It's not really an issue. They do it in new creative ways, but Majora's Mask is honestly one of the weirdest games I've ever played. And because of that, some people, this is their favorite Zelda. And I understand they're more interesting, dynamic, artistic, whatever. I still love Ocarina. Some people love Majora. And, it's kind of an interesting discrepancy. But usually if you've played Ocarina and you love it, by all means, follow it up with Majora, because that's just what you're probably going to do anyway. Jumping to the GameCube, we have The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. I loved this game, but when it first came out and first revealed, people were expecting the next Zelda to look more like its contemporary games on PlayStation and Xbox. Things were getting grittier, edgier, more dark in tone, and Nintendo went for a more cartoon style aspect with The Wind Waker, where Toon Link, as he's now referred to, is this short little guy that never grows up into an adult, and basically just stays in this cartoonish style world. However, despite all of the kind of oddness from the first look at this game, this is my second favorite Zelda game besides Ocarina. You have kind of the first style open world where you can explore all these islands. The story is actually really great and fantastic about this ancient kingdom. Of course, Hyrule, that's been taken over by dark forces, put under the ocean, put under the sea. It's a great game, honestly. I know Ocarina is kind of hailed as the champion, and then, second place kind of goes here or there, maybe Majora, but my second place is absolutely Wind Waker. It is a fantastic game. I've replayed it multiple times. It is just such a well-made game with a great soundtrack and a great final boss. It really kind of showed me that style over substance over style, how a game looks, how it actually feels, and the actual story message behind it can be greater than just its appearance. So Wind Waker, again, just another classic, and it is absolutely up there with the rest of them. Jumping to the next generation on the Wii, we have Twilight Princess. Technically, there is this was a cross-platform game, so there were some GameCube versions of this game as well, but I think they're 1/5 or 1/6 of the actual production line. So while it exists, it was kind of the less common experience. Another major change from the GameCube to Twilight Princess is that they flipped the entire world. Now, what's interesting about this game is that the aesthetic, the art style, if you can actually just look at this game, it is exactly what gamers kind of wanted in the early 2000s, a more edgier, darker Link, more realistic kind of look, almost Lord of the Rings kind of vibe in some places on horseback. And it's not quite as good as the rest of them. Twilight Princess is a weird game where, again, you're probably going to play this as you pick up from Wind Waker. It's a bit, similar to Majora's Mask, it's a bit darker, it's kind of a bit weirder, but there's just something about it that isn't quite as fun. The levels, the puzzle design, they're okay. The best thing about this, honestly, is Hyrule Field. In some places, they have this rivalry with this kind of orc boss. It was trying to do something, and it kind of did, but it didn't really nail the landing. I know there's a lot of things of this game that people wanted it to be and just didn't quite live up to the expectation. That being said, it's still a very decent Zelda. And again, it looks really good, but when you actually play it, it's not quite there. It's not exactly what gamers wanted. While if Wind Waker had this aesthetic, it would be my favorite game of all time, maybe more than Ocarina, but unfortunately they kind of got their wires crossed. And so again, it's a decent Zelda, and it has its pros, but it definitely has its cons. So it's definitely kind of a mixed bag, but definitely kind of part of the iconic experience of the Zelda franchise. The next game on the same console, actually on the Wii, is a game that I have a lot of trouble talking about, and that game is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Now, you know, if Twilight Princess was kind of a mixed bag, this is where things really got kind of rough. And this is very controversial, because if you're a diehard Zelda fan, like, oh, they're all good. No. This is the first game that was so bad, I legitimately thought about never playing a Zelda game ever again. And there are some benefits here, but don't get me wrong. Like, it's not a complete disaster, but it's almost like, well, for example, one of the side characters, Groose, no, he's not on the back, almost feels more like a main character than Link does in some cases. It's a weird experience. And the real issue here is that this was sold as the origin story. This was all the reason for everything. And just from everything from like the half Wind Waker, half Twilight Princess, it's like they had a baby in terms of aesthetics. It was kind of cel shaded, but kind of adult Link. You have this whole thing where the sword is a robot and it talks to you through the Wii remote. The big thing about this is that the Wii Motion Plus allowed you to swing the sword in any direction, kind of like what all the commercials for the Wii, showing that you could actually swing in a direction that would actually work. But how you incorporate that into gameplay, no one really wanted to bother to do that because it was too complicated and too weird. And people just didn't want to stand up and, play games. They wanted to just move their wrists or their thumbs at the most. The story's not good. There's a lot of things here that are just like really not good. And even the Sky Islands that it introduces, which are going to be done better in its sequel, really are so bare bones. This game, I'm just going to say it, you should actually skip Skyward Sword. This is the one Zelda game in the series that I just flat out do not like. And I'm like, you should really just not play this, even though it's an origin story, I know. But honestly, its sequels offer a better origin story. So this was one big disaster in the midst of a great series that is kind of unfortunate. Next up, a generation, we have on the Nintendo Switch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This is where people went nuts, and where Nintendo also equally went nuts with redesigning every fundamental aspect of the Zelda game, almost every fundamental aspect, to the point where the good and bad kind of come with the same comment that this feels like a completely different game. And with the blunder that was Skyward Sword, they kind of had to reinvent the wheel here, which they did, which is great. And it's a great game. It's just not a Zelda game. And that's what you'll hear a lot of people say and talk about it. I know for some people, this is considered their favorite game of all time, their 10 out of 10. And, while I kind of agree mechanically, this game is actually phenomenal. And, for example, what happens is Link, he wakes up after 100 years, and you have these 5 new mechanics that allow you to manipulate the world, from freezing water to using telekinesis to momentum to stopping motion to reversing motion and a bunch of things like that. And so this is the first time Nintendo really committed to the open world style gameplay, where the world is humongous, it's filled with items and enemies and rare creatures and things to explore. And the only kind of issue is that I've seen with it is that it's a little bit empty in some cases. Yes, there's usually something to go and explore, but the real issue, I think, is that the shrines, the main thing that it populates in the world to find and do, are just very repetitive. And so while this game is kind of fine to play, to actually complete it, to actually do what I would consider to be the baseline requirement of completion, which is doing every shrine, collecting every important thing. There are these things called Korok seeds, which are these kind of one-off puzzles you find through the world, which you use to upgrade your inventory. And at a certain point, I think after, I don't know if it's 300 Korok seeds or 500, you kind of get every single possible upgrade, but you can still collecting them because they put almost basically 1,000 of them in the game. But past the halfway point, roughly, there's no real incentive to actually keep collecting them. And in fact, if you do keep collecting them, your final reward is a piece of golden poo. So it's kind of like the developers saying, hey, yeah, you can collect these things, but you really don't have to. You shouldn't. It's like, if you really want the golden poo, you can get the golden poo, but you really should not do it. And so, there's a lot of quantity in this game, but not quite a lot of quality. And that was the main complaint that people had. Even the dungeons are super simple and super, super short. So it feels like there's a lot of content here, and it's just not as quality content as the past games, where a dungeon would be a 30-minute to an hour experience of complex, continuous puzzles, a completely different game design. It still is a fun game. My personal complaint with it is that the story is just nowhere to be found. It is very bare bones, and they try to kind of expand in the sequel, but even then, it's here nor there. But yeah, this game overall, it's a great game. It's just not a Zelda game. And I think that's what you're going to hear everyone say. Of course, we cannot forget its sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. Again, this is where, while Breath of the Wild was very experimental, people had a lot bigger expectations. I mean, Breath of the Wild came out 2017, and since then it inspired games like Genshin Impact, which is a $1 billion value game from China, which combines all these different aspects. And so, the sequel, all these open world games have been out for years. They've had time to learn and adapt. And so what do? They kind of just make the same game again. I mean, there are, I think a great addition are the caves, so that there's more density of things to explore and find. They have new power-ups, which are much more effective. That allows you to levitate up through the sky or go through, solid ground to let you navigate the world as fast as possible. They gave you this really cool fusion system and crafting system where you can combine things together and find all these really cool Easter eggs. And now they have, the whole Sky Island area and the whole underworld, which is super cool. Again, all of that new stuff that they've added to this, the overworld is still the same. And that is a big, big issue. And so it's basically the same overworld, which is not great. We've already explored and beaten all this stuff, and now we just kind of feel like we're doing it again. Yes, we have a different toolbox, and that's way more effective now, but it does feel like it's the same. And yes, there are new things where you have to help, there's one mini game where you have to help this guy balance things. And again, mechanically, this game is actually fantastic. It is amazing. I mean, mechanically, the way that you construct vehicles, combine things, it's incredible. It's just that there's no qualitative aspect to it. You can make the most amazing vehicle, but you have no incentive to ever really use it. It's just kind of there. It's very impressive, and I love it. I love how everything is on a 90, or not even a 90-degree axis, but everything is on kind of a grid, an invisible grid that snaps together perfectly. This is really impressive. This is what I expect from I don't know, something like Minecraft or something, or some other game, but it's in a Zelda game. And again, my issue is that all my complaints from the previous game are kind of still here, sadly. Yes, we have a new open world in the sky, but the Sky Islands, a lot of them are kind of copy-pasted or the same kind of outlay, and there honestly aren't that many of them. And the underworld, while it is really cool, and you have this kind of, structure where you have light roots and then mines where you can get zonite, and also these treasure chests which contain really cool items that are essentially equipment and homages to the previous games. Again, it's just a bunch of copy-pasted content. It's cool. You'll do an hour of the underworld, and it's okay, this is the kind of the hard zone of the game. But there's just so much quantity without that feeling of tapered quality. It feels like they just did a lot of copy pasting. Again, even though the new mechanics are really good, you can't shake that feeling that, this is just more of the same kind of. It's really why, I really think of Zelda as Ocarina and these new Zeldas as just different games entirely. This is a game you're going to jump into if you've played Breath of the Wild. However, if you play this one first, are you really missing much? I mean, not really, but anyone who's going to play these games is probably going to play Breath first and then move on to this one. So it's kind of like you're almost obligated to go to this one once you've played Breath. But it's still a great game. Again, my other big issue from the last one is the lack of story. It kind of remedies that here. Like, they introduce some new, story moments and the world of Zelda and Hyrule, but it did not feel very significant to me. There's a lot of, again, repetition of certain characters and tropes, and what is new is so small and kind of insignificant. I can't really say I cared for it, honestly. I love the way how the game ended, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel the playtime justifies the quality in the game. To actually complete everything and do, a full appreciation of the game, I just don't feel you really get that feeling of appreciation. Or I feel like when you really love something, you want to give it your time. And for this one, when you give it your time, it feels like it's asking for way more than what it's worth. But, there's Zelda. So Zelda's gone through a very interesting change. It started off as, an open world exploring thing, about conquering monsters and doing puzzles and dungeons, and it's come a long way. But Ocarina is the game. As much as Zelda has adapted and generated new styles of content, gameplay, made amazing 10 out of 10 games, or even 8, 9 out of 10 games, every one of their games, every Zelda game is usually a very quality game. But aside from all of that, they can't seem to come back to Ocarina and how effective that game was. And it's going to become an absolute classic for the years and the generations. So if anything, play Ocarina. And yeah, that's the one, man.